Hi class, I'm back. This is one of our last assignments of the year, and today we're going to learn about an economic concept called anti-fragility or anti-fragile. This is pretty new stuff. The guy who kind of coined this term anti-fragile is named Nassim Taleb. He wrote this book in 2012 called Antifragile, and here is what it's all about. Let's start off by examining what is fragile. So this is a teacup. It is fragile. If I break it or if I drop it, it will break. And that's pretty much all you need to know about the teacup being fragile. Now, the question is, what is the opposite of fragile? Think about what is the opposite of fragile. You might be tempted to say it's something like this, like a tank or a bowling ball or a bike lock, something that's very hard to break, right? Like the teacup is easy to break, so it's fragile. These things are hard to break. But what Taleb says is, no. These are not actually the opposite of fragile. These are robust, for sure. They're very, very hard to break or damage. But they're never strengthened from pressure. The teacup is weakened from pressure very easily. But these are also weakened from pressure, right? It just takes a lot more pressure. And what the true opposite of fragile would be something that is strengthened under pressure. So are there things that actually become stronger as they are stressed and put under pressure? Well, there are. How about the muscular system? So human muscles need pressure to stay toned and to stay fit. And to get bigger, you need to stress your muscles. So if you go lift weights and like pump the iron, you're ultimately stressing your muscles. And when they recover stronger than they were before, and you get stronger. If your muscles are not used, they get weaker. So this is why, like when an astronaut goes into space and all of a sudden they don't have to live in gravity, their muscles really weaken quite quickly because just walking to the refrigerator is actually using your muscles a little tiny bit. But when you stop doing that, they weaken very rapidly. So astronauts have to come up with all these creative ways, like tying themselves down to a treadmill and exercising on it and things like that. And it's still tough because gravity is hard to mimic. So the muscular system is anti-fragile. It needs pressure to stay strong and to get strong. And in the absence of stress and pressure, it actually weakens. Now, one kind of caveat here too is too much pressure is obviously going to damage it, right? Like we can't just drop a car on your muscles and make them stronger. Too much pressure overwhelms anything, even the anti-fragile. What anti-fragility is saying is kind of all about is not that like there's certain things that can withstand any pressure. Nothing can. It's that certain systems need pressure to become stronger. The human mind is anti-fragile, right? When we go to school and we read books and we challenge our mind is strengthened. And if we don't go to school and we don't challenge our mind, the mind weakens, right? If you just did 2 plus 3 all day long, your mind would not really be strengthening. But when you are confronted with math problems that are just a little harder than the ones you had before and you're challenged, you become stronger at math and your mind is strengthened, right? So the mind is anti-fragile. It needs stress and it needs challenge and it needs that to become stronger. Again, too much stress, too much pressure, totally different story. Anything can be overwhelmed by too much, but without any pressure or any stress or any challenge, the mind weakens. So it is anti-fragile. Evolution is an anti-fragile process, right? You've heard the like only the strong survive kind of a thing in evolution. When there is a genetic modification that allows for a trait that, operates better than other traits that allows survival and reproduction, that trait, is often the one that is passed on to future generations. So stress from the outside environment, be it predators or disease that hits plants and trees, that ultimately creates much stronger species through the process of evolution. So evolution is an anti-fragile process. And Taleb would say that an economy is anti-fragile, that um, economies slowly get better as they are ultimately stressed and challenged. And he goes on to use this as kind of like an anti-Keynesian economics argument, right? If you remember back to way back a few weeks ago when we talked about Keynes and Hayek, Keynes argued that the government should actively step in to prop up an economy under duress. And Taleb would argue, no. Ultimately, this makes for a weaker economy in the long run. That if you let the economy face the challenges it's confronted with naturally, you'll end up with a stronger economy in the long run. But we can talk a little more about that in class too. Here's kind of a just quick recap. So you've got fragile, which is like the teacup or the glass. You've got robust, right? But then you've got anti-fragile, which is something different altogether, something that is strengthened under pressure. So tonight, homework, here's what I want y'all to do. Send me an example of something that is anti-fragile that was not mentioned in this slideshow. So this might get a little challenging, right? I want you guys to really go try to think about this and try to really think about if your idea is truly anti-fragile and explain to me how it's anti-fragile, right? Don't just be like traffic lights, right? Like I don't think traffic lights are necessary. Maybe traffic lights are anti-fragile. I just made that up. Who knows? But if you think they are, I want you to explain to me how. Give me an example of something anti-fragile and explain to me why you think it is anti-fragile. This is also on the Nest, of course, and it is due for your next classes, which are Thursday and Friday. Thanks for listening and watching, everyone. Bye-bye.